There are three defining attributes of Nigeria's economic situation. Those defining attributes remain. And the first is that the Nigerian economy presents across, whether you're looking at growth, whether you're looking at stability, whether you're looking at liquidity, presents a situation in which the key variables of interest tend to be up today and down tomorrow, and then back up the day after. So, one defining attribute of Nigeria's economy is cyclical swings in growth, in stability, and in liquidity. The second defining feature is structural shifts. Key measures of production are shifting in undesirable directions. Worrying patterns are emerging in both production and in spending. GDP today is almost 2/3 services. While as of 2010, services in both crops and oil were individually larger than services. So you have a situation in which services are surged, strikingly. It's not a desirable structural shift. It means that our economy, 2/3 of our economic activity is just pushing around goods produced elsewhere. Because if agric is declining as a fraction of GDP and industry is declining as a fraction of GDP, and the only thing that is growing are services, means that what is being serviced is not produced here, it's produced elsewhere. And that is worrying. Spending, similarly, the story of spending is that whereas investment and government spending were nearly as large as consumption, if the two of them put together, could have been nearly as large as consumption about, 2010. Today, consumption has surged to higher than 70%. And we've seen steady decline in investment, steady decline in government spending. So undesirable structural shifts. In particular, budgets across the tiers of the Federation have declined relative to GDP. These structural shifts weakens the outlook. The key question is, what could the government have done differently? If we want to see, desirable structural shifts in the future, what should we be doing? We talk a lot about infrastructure. One reason for services, dominating GDP is weak infrastructure, power and energy, transportation and energy infrastructure, particularly the absence of rail. Now, what that's to be in place will make both agriculture and industry more competitive. So, key question: yes, the regime tried. What more could they have done? And the final one, which is as worrying as the first two, if not even more worrying, that Nigeria's economy has had to grapple with some policy hurdles over the last 4 years, in particular, since 2015. Fiscal policy, the hurdle is, yes, the fiscal policy expresses good intentions, but when you cannot find the revenues to make the good intentions happen, it is a hurdle. And the current regime in particular came in very ambitious, to do and undo. If you remember, the manifesto, if you look at the budgets, if you look at the ARGP, they were not lacking in good intentions. Where the problem comes is, plans will be announced, but there will be no money to fund it. So you get the impression that the regime came in, eager, fired up to make things happen, but seemed to have assumed that the money to make those things happen will be there. And he had made promises based on that assumption. And Treasury was empty. We learned, in 2015, shortly after, he got on the saddle. And it seemed that, budget after budget was assumed that somehow, the Treasury will be replenished. And budget after budget, the Treasury seemed to have remained empty. So what should they do differently? The regime, most of the much that they did were funded by borrowings. And that's clearly not sustainable. So the fiscal hurdle of low revenue must be scaled if the second term is going to be different from the first term. So now it is not someone else that's coming back now. It's the same regime that's coming back. So will they, say more and do more about how to find the revenue? Not just announcing plans to build, transform infrastructure, to do social welfare, and then not find the money to do even half of what they desire to do. So will they devote more time now, to where the money will come from, and speak with assurance? Okay, we've taken steps A, B, C that will ensure that money will be available and that whatever pronouncement we make, we can pay for. Okay, so that's a major one. That's fiscal policy. The second hurdle is monetary policy. And it's as, debilitating, even if not more debilitating, that you have a central bank that since July 2016, Monetary Policy Committee had met every 2 months, except, one that they missed and another delayed. They talked to us about the case for easing, the case for tightening, the case for holding. And since July 2016 till March, the last meeting that they held about 3 weeks ago, they did not move any monetary policy lever. Why? In spite of, they expressing the need to move levers. Then they tell you they can't. Because if they did, if they eased, we were in a recession. You recall, 2016, growth was negative. If they eased to boost growth, that the increased liquidity will find its way to the foreign exchange market and weaken the exchange rate. And therefore, they talked but could not act for nearly 3 years until, last month, and they eased 5%. But see, why the fear of exchange rate? Why the fear of devaluation? The hurdle is that they do not have enough foreign exchange to meet demand. Just like the government doesn't have enough revenue to back its plans and budgets, the central bank does not have enough foreign exchange to meet demand. And therefore, lost its autonomy to do monetary policy. Now, what should they do differently? So it was, like a defense, they got into a defense mode. They lacked the capacity to attack. So they managed risk, they couldn't do strategy. Same reasons every 2 months, same issues every 2 months. At the end of the day, it became, a bulldog that could bark but couldn't bite. So to have a situation in which that would have lasted 2 years or more meant a lack of strategic approach by country Nigeria, not just central bank. For a central bank to be in that kind of situation for more than 2 years, you needn't be in that situation if you acted strategically. The first 2 meetings, when they talked like that we would have loved to act, we couldn't act because, we don't have the forex to increase demand. A government will take concerted efforts to help the country look for reserves that will give back autonomy to the central bank. So what can they do differently, second term? And of course, the final, hurdle is about investment. Nigeria talks a lot about investment, foreign investment. We say so much, but we see so little.